I'm back. I'm Shawn Childs of fantasyanalyst.substack.com. Did an underdog draft a little bit yesterday and did some analyzing it. And I thought I'd take the time to, maybe review some high stakes drafts just to get a feel for it. I'm stuck in the best ball mode mentally. So when you're doing the high stakes events at the various sites, National Fantasy Football Championship, Fantasy Football World Championship, and Fantasy Football Players Championship. You have to build your best starting lineup and try to eliminate as many decisions as possible. With the best ball, you're trying to cover different avenues and like give yourself more outs at positions, and you don't make mistakes with the lineups because the computer is going to pick your best team. So this first one is the FFPC is a Fantasy Players Championship. Started a long time ago after the Wyckoff. Interesting format. Tight ends are worth 1.5. It adds a really a wide range of draft order players because the tight ends get pushed up a lot higher. The wide receivers tend to be some of them tend to be values like the second and third ones. So the draft flow is totally different than the other two formats. Quarterbacks are 4 points, scoring for passing touchdowns, 6 for rushing. This main event, they need 4,260 teams to fill their main event. The entry fee is $2,000 for online, $21.25 live in Las Vegas. Really expensive. If you buy a second team, it's $400 off at $1,600, $1,725 live. So you got a chance. I believe it's $1 million for first. So you're swinging for the fences, and it pays 3 spots, and the top 4 teams compete for a playoff spot. When they first started the Fantasy Players Championship, the name, Fantasy Championship Players Championship, they're trying to be the best for the players. But unfortunately, over time, they haven't done their best for the players and thinking out some of their rules. So in their format, you play every team once for the first 12 weeks, and there's an all play 1 week. And this year it's week 6, and I think it's been week 6 since 2021, which the all play is fine to have in a schedule and try to extend the season, because when the NFL added another week. But the thing is, they didn't think this out. If you're going to have an all play, you can't have teams on a bye week. It's just not a way to run a football event. You would like everybody to be on an even playing field when an all play, and not some teams being short. And if you just looked at the NFL schedule this year, week 8, everybody's off. You could have just easily have said week 8 would have been fine, but they don't look at it. They don't think about the players, which they're trying to represent. The second issue was, other than the different events, they have their championship rounds weeks 13 and 14. So when you're heading into that format, best record, most points, best record, most points, top 4 teams get in. If you have the most points or best record, you qualify for the championship round, chance to win $1 million. If you happen to have some issues and you got to qualify, you got to win in week 13 to get to the championship game. And the third and fourth team, one of those teams has to win to be the third team to make it to the next round. And that's really, really difficult, especially when you're having run your playoffs with the bye weeks. Fortunately for this year, everybody plays. The season's a little earlier, so everybody plays on Thanksgiving. So the first week of the playoffs, everybody will be playing. That's great for some players. But in their championship round is week 14 this year. 6 teams have a bye. That's it. That's a problem. I mean, you have Houston, Denver, Baltimore, Indianapolis, New England, and Washington. I mean, how many players on Houston are going to be starters? Indianapolis is going to have some starters. New England, Denver, not so much. Baltimore is going to have some starters, and Washington, there's going to be a couple players. But anyways, you could have a great team and still survive that and come in best record or most points if you structure it a certain way. So, some teams won't get penalized, but there's going to be some teams that need to win that week, and they're going to be down 1, possibly 2, possibly 3 players, and that's going to be a disadvantage. So that's just a little bit about the event. I just think that it should be thought out a little bit better as the NFL. Even if they add, an 18th week, you have to adjust your rules to be best for your inventory. And unfortunately, this hasn't done it. And somebody will say, the event's really big. It's got 4,000 teams. I'm never going to play that. But the difference between this and some of the other events is when there's that many entries, it kind of diversifies and spreads out some of the good players out, gives them a better chance to be more competitive. And it also helps the the novice. He doesn't get shoved in with 9 guys that that have played the event a lot. They know the draft flows and they have opinions of the game. So all right, so that's just a little bit about the game. It's like a lot different, but I'm going to show you the walk through probably maybe the first 8 rounds, talk about some players, team structure. I drafted this. It's got 1 round left. I got 1 player, but it's a slow draft, and this is a main event. And I just want to talk about what I was thinking. And it's really the first time draft. I was going to do it later, but I figured I've done the research. I might as well get ahead of it. But I'm relying on their draft flows, and I have to make judgments on what's going on there. So here it is. So in this particular draft, I had picked 1, and this was I think I did this draft started right around the time that McCaffrey potentially had the calf issue. I think I started it before, but I opened up that I took McCaffrey with the first pick. He's the best player last year, talented, great offense. He's going to score, catch passes, does it all. The other running backs are banged up, and he's banged up, but he's a difference maker if he stays healthy. In the NFFC over the past 3 or 4 years, I've had like 1 main event, and I get an early position. And historically, I had McCaffrey the year after a good year. He's out for the season. Saquon Barkley. It was in a year that I had picked 2, and I had the Dalvin Cook was there, but I didn't take him. I took Devontae Adams, and I survived that one. And last year, I think I had Chase at pick 3, and Burrow goes down, and so I've been kind of had good draft picks, and get for whatever reason get beat up, and it doesn't take much to lose one of the events. If you fall like 60-70 points behind because of an injury, you can kind of find like where you fell short and you could have been a better team. But anyways, so in this draft, in the first 2 rounds, 3 tight ends went off the board, and that's going to be a lot different than other formats. And even through the first 5 rounds, what do we have? 3, 7, 10 tight ends. So when you're mentally, when you're looking at this, is that you want to do the same thing as any other draft. You want to get the foundation running backs that have, the best players in fantasy are the running backs that play all 3 downs, that they catch passes, they have volume of rushes, and they score touchdowns. That's the most valuable player. They have the highest upside. The wide receivers that can catch well over 100 passes, get 1,500 yards or so, or maybe more, and score double-digit touchdowns, they're the second best. But there has been times that, like, CeeDee Lamb, I think he outscored McCaffrey by a couple points last year. And we saw Cooper Kupp a couple of years ago that he had a monster year, which I think it was the best in the history of the NFL. They can put up these monster, 400-point seasons, and they're really, really difference maker. Ideally, you're looking for a wide receiver that could get 300 points, and anything above that is really, really an advantage. If you're looking for that lead running back like a McCaffrey, I think he scored 390 last year. 350 or higher, you got a good back. So in this particular case, you're going to get to a point where the tight ends, Travis Kelce, when he's catching 100 passes and getting 1,200 yards and 10 touchdowns, that 100 catches is 150 points. 10 touchdowns is another 60. That's 210. If he gets 1,200, that's 330 points. So he kind of matches a lot of the wide receivers. So you just have to decide, do I want a tight end and have that advantage at the position, and also eliminate some decision making? And so you kind of got this mental gauge of, as you're doing it and you play it more and you got a little more experience, is what do you think a player's worth? And then just for a quick reference of, like, in the 5th round, I end up taking Jake Ferguson. But, just based on last year, this guy had 70 catches, 700 yards, and maybe 3 or 4 touchdowns or whatever. But, when you look at it compared to a receiver, he's a 100 catch guy. And now, is he better than, Zay Flowers, Amari Cooper, Pickens? These guys did pretty well last year, but I think they're kind of could be almost equal players. So you're trying to, judge which is more valuable. But, you want to get your foundation piece. Is it going to be a wide receiver or a tight end? Most likely those comparisons are with wide receiver and tight ends, because the running backs are a little bit different because people are going to play the game different. Ideally, in the high stakes market, in the early history of it, the teams that were really, really good, that had the the advantage over most of the players early, they would get that one elite running back, and then they would just get three good wide receivers, possibly four, and they would fill up their flex spot with a wide receiver, and it would add a consistency factor, and they would have some impact value by having a good running back, and then they would kind of fill it in. So over the time, you'll see teams now that they really, really want wide receivers, but you can't win an overall championship like this without having good running backs, and you don't necessarily have to have the running backs out of the gate. So with that, that other early theory is that RB2 is kind of punted, and your goal is to find, some upside back that gets a job or off the waiver wire and improve that team at the end of the year. And then that team's really, really competitive if you click on all your players, hit on all your players and they stay healthy. So, but there's a lot of teams that are willing to fade the running back position and push the wide receivers. I don't see in any of these drafts right here, there's nobody that used an opening of 3 wide receivers in a row. We did see team 7 went Jamar Chase, Travis Kelce, Dalton Kincaid. So that's almost like a wide receiver opening, but he took advantage of the tight end of scoring a 1.5. And the other thing with this one is this format, the FFPC, is that you play 2 running backs, 2 wide receivers, and there's 2 flex positions. And by doing the 2 flex positions, you're able to play 3 tight ends. You might only have to play 2 wide receivers, and maybe you want a third one. So you can get away with having less wide receivers on the team. If you have some issues at running back, advantage at running back, and you have 4 of them, you can play 4 running backs. So I think the dual flex is definitely the way to go. The National Fantasy Football Championship, I've had the discussion with Greg Avrosius a few times, and they just won't commit to that. And it really kind of penalizes somebody that has an advantage on their bench. They have a good player. They drafted like 2 really good receivers as their 3rd and 4th, and they both get hurt, and they have this extra running back that sits on their bench that they can't get in. Even if he gets 10 or 12 points, he's a better player than they can find on the waiver wire. So the double flex is better. So that allows somebody that's going to double stuff the tight end to do that, and they still could I've seen teams take 3 of them. So it's like when you get to that point of taking Travis Kelce, you're looking at him. Is this guy, is he a 250-point player? And is that, Chris Olave a 250-point player? Well, they could be about equal. And then you're going to say, all right, I could use either one. But now when I'm going to switch and the Kelce guy, when he takes his wide receiver, in this case, just say Pickens, because he's the first one he took, maybe Pickens last year, was he 1,300 and 5 or 6 touchdowns? So just say he's a 230 player. Is that other tight end, George Kittle, is he going to be a 230 player? So he needs 80 catches. And if you get 1.5, maybe 120, 800 yards. That's 200, and if he gets 5 touchdowns, so Kittle could outscore him. I don't think he did last year. The catches were a little down. He didn't get as many touchdowns, but it's in that comparison that you're looking for. So it's really the people that are good at this game. They have a really good feel to win, to get in and out at the tight end position, and you can win by having a mediocre tight end. You can win by having good tight ends, and you even can have some that get 2. Ideally, you do want to come out of these kind of drafts with 2 tight ends, because fishing on the waiver wire is really difficult because so many people hoard it. There's probably in other leagues there might be 10 or 12 of these tight ends that are in the waiver pool, and you could maybe pick up 10 points here or there, but they tend to get held there and they get played for bye weeks. And it makes it really, really difficult to kind of fix it. But I would say typically every season in fantasy, there's going to be early in the year, there's going to be a tight end that pops. Laporta was a guy last year for Detroit. He's probably like a 13th round draft pick, and he ended up being, what is he, the 2nd highest? He gets drafted first in this one. I know he's a little nicked up, but other years I've seen the tight end. So you got to, if there's somebody in a regular, not a 1.5 one, and somebody gets out of the gate good, you kind of have to be, pay attention to that, because I've seen it multiple years where a tight end comes out of nowhere. And even in this format, there could be somebody that sneaks through. But generally, because so many get drafted, you're going to have less chance to find that player in this format. But one of these 10 teams might be, could have 4 tight ends or 3 tight ends, and they have an injury in another position, and somebody starts off slow, and they might release somebody, and they'll get put in the player pool. And if they do well that week, they could be expensive to pick up. So I want, that's kind of like the outlook of, the players and stuff like that. But I'm going to go through it. So, and just I'm going to talk about the players because I have a lot of people that aren't in tune. They follow the content, but they're not in depth of what's going on with the player pool and stuff like that, fully in the comparison. So I'm going to go through it. Obviously, McCaffrey, great 3-down back. Talked about him. Lamb, awesome player last year. Really love the direction of him. The only problem with it right now, he's kind of holding out, and Dallas isn't saying the right thing. Like we want to get their guy back in camp. Sometimes when they hold out, it can be an injury, but these guys don't need to get beat up in August in preseason games or even practice. So, you just got to keep an eye on it. He should sign. Really just was the guy to have late in the year last year. Tyreek Hill had a great season last year, kind of faded off at the end. Really, really explosive. I kind of think that of the two of those, I think Lamb's a young guy on the rise. Let me say, and I shouldn't say this because last year, Justin Jefferson was coming off a great year, and then he started off great for 4 games and then get hurt. And so I've got this mental thing and it's probably more for because the baseball has got beat up, but the early picks and even when I describe the running backs that I've had the last few years, it just seems like there's no consistency from year to year. And these guys just like have a career year and then they have some sort of issue, or the touchdowns don't match up and they're not worth their draft pick. So I think Tyreek was on a career path. He could have had almost 2,000 yards. He's getting older. He actually, worked out a contract to try to help the team, get somebody in there. But he's getting drafted 3rd overall. He's a difference maker. He was so good in so many games last year. I can't knock him, but part of me thinks that something will go sideways on him. Bijan Robinson is getting really pushed up as the 2nd running back. They think of the change in coaching staff in Atlanta, a better quarterback. He's a pass catcher. He's going to get a few more chances. I'm not so sure that they're going to Tyler Algier is going to – I think he's not going to go away. He's still going to be somewhat of a factor. I mean, I think Robinson still could get 300 touches. I'm not sure what his ceiling will be in touchdowns. He definitely is, looks really, really good catching the ball. But how much scoring is that offense going to do? I don't know. And the division looks favorable too. But he could be at his best at the end of the year. So I have plenty of shares of him. I'm not going to knock him. Justin Jefferson, I think it's just the way this Minnesota thing's going right now. He's coming off an injury with J.J. McCarthy, who I was really, really high on. With him being out, not playing, I really don't think the ceiling of the passing offense will be high, with Sam Darnold as quarterback. But he's been around long enough. And I really wanted to look at Darnold to see what's the best receivers has he played with, like as lead receiver. And I know he's had flashes at times. He plays 3 or 4 games, 300 yards, looks pretty good, and then he kind of fades off. But they're going to have to stick with him unless they make a trade, like somebody else, a second quarterback that's decent. They make a trade and whatever. But so Jefferson is a good player, but I expect him from whatever has happened. He's going to back up. You got Hawkinson coming off a knee issue. He's not going to be out of the gate. You had Addison, the other wide receiver from Minnesota. He could get suspended for 3 games. His hearing's like October 7th. But he got banged up. And it looked like he had a big injury, and I don't think it's that bad. But just like that little stuff, when you adds up, sometimes the team just, their offense goes in the wrong direction. They added another running back. So, but I think he's going to get discounted. I think Chase is actually holding out too. He's in camp, but he wants another contract extension. I wish these teams would just get this stuff done. The other receivers are getting paid. They just want a penny pinch. The NFL makes so much money, and they just got to pay their star players. But so Chase is holding out. Similar issue as Lamb. Maybe not as much work because Chase is there. So I don't know where that stands, but and I think that in comparison to Jamar Chase and Jefferson, Burrow's a lot better quarterback than Sam Darnold. So you got in this particular case, Chase would get the advantage, but he's also, he's kind of thought he was going to be a monster, and he hasn't got that for either the quarterback or they're injured, or the year before he missed some time. But the potential is there, and I don't think we've seen him at his best, or we haven't seen the Cincinnati Bengals offense at his best. As for Breece Hall, really had a great season last year. I think he had 79 catches, scored 290 fantasy points. He was coming off an injury. He got on the field the first couple of weeks, didn't have a lot of touches, and he had to come with some quiet games early in the year. But by the end of the year, he made big plays. He played with a terrible quarterback. The offense was run, so bad, after they lost Rodgers after one snap or whatever in week 1. But he has the talent. When I look at him, I'm thinking him as Le'Veon Bell type of player, where Le'Veon Bell was a little more patient and he could make some big plays, but I think Hall could finish those plays, and I think Hall could catch more passes. I'm not sure Aaron Rodgers is going to complete 90 passes to him, but he's going to have that option. He's going to get a lot of passes. They got a good wide receiver. I expect Mike Williams to be, an active player. They got a decent tight end. So I think Hall has the potential to get 16 touchdowns or so, one a game. The offense is going to be a lot better. They're going to, maybe Buffalo's going to be tough, but Miami will score, and New England, the division's okay. And I think even last year, Buffalo, their defense regressed, and maybe against the run. So I just didn't do as detailed research on the defense as I did in the past, just to, life and trying to get this fantasy thing. But Hall is, for me, I'm drafting him all day long instead of in front of Bijan Robinson. And that doesn't mean that Bijan Robinson wins you the championship, because really you need those players in weeks 15 to 17 to have their best weeks. And I think, but I think Hall is a difference maker. I would take him, in front, and I have no problem if you took him in front of any of those receivers, especially with Jefferson's going on, and Lamb holding out. Lamb's got a great season, career year. Hill kind of a career year. So that's kind of a factor for me. And you could say Breece Hall's coming off a career year, but I think in this case, he does have the talent, and he's on the ascension as you're moving up. So then we go to the 8th pick, and Amon-Ra St. Brown. We all know his story. 13 receivers or so got drafted in front of him. He talks about them each day, and he catches 200 balls a day, and he really works hard. And he gets nicked up a little bit, but he has that, he has that high volume Cooper Kupp foundation. And even last year, he added that extra level where he got, he made bigger plays. They were longer. The Lions offense is improving. He's definitely the number one receiving threat. The only thing that he doesn't have that he kind of like, if Jefferson or Chase, or even Hill or Lamb, he hasn't shown that he's like he could maybe get 12 to 15 touchdowns. Yeah, I think he could get to 10, and maybe he could get more, but that's the missing ingredient to really be the difference maker, to get that one level higher. So, but he's a great foundation piece. He adds consistency. There's really nothing that you could say bad about him. Puka Nacua, he comes off a great rookie season, was just awesome. And he was pretty much the people that were on him. They stole him. They got him for free. But he falls into that career year category. And plus he had this little, I think it's a burst or sack knee thing that kind of burst, and he had a little knee issue. And he's kind of a physical player. A lot of, really balls close to the line of scrimmage, and just really kind of, taking some hits. So, I think his injury was before this draft. After this draft. So Puka kind of held value based on where he was. I think he's more going on the turn now, and slipped a couple rounds. But I think the Rams expect him to play week 1, but that's just enough information if something happening where you're like, it's hard enough winning fantasy football or baseball with healthy players than drafting people that are already nicked up and have an issue. So, I personally, I probably wouldn't start with him, but that could change. And if the player, like that type of player, slides in the second round, you're like, oh, this is a steal. So in relationship to Puka, like in this, Cooper Kupp was going in the 3rd round. I probably had Kupp maybe 80 catches, and 1,000 yards and whatever touchdowns. But you know, he had that full season that was a monster, and the next 8 games a monster. But then the last year and that second half, he just battled injuries. But he, great route runner, getting a little older. I think he might be 30 this year. I think that he has the potential to be that high volume like St. Brown. So he started to move up into the second round, like getting in front of Olave, even past Adams and some. He hasn't got to. I haven't seen him taken in front of Harrison too much, but he has a much better resume than London. But he's the guy that people are willing to move with the Puka news, and rightfully so. So that's the reflection of it. Garrett Wilson talked about Aaron Rodgers. Everybody's thinking that with Rodgers there, he's going to be like kind of the Devontae Adams. The chemistry in training camp really wasn't there. So I haven't followed it, the last week or so. I've been working and whatever. So there was just a little rift between Aaron Rodgers and him, and just timing and stuff. And that stuff should work out over time, but because he's really talented and Rodgers can deliver the ball on time. AJ Brown, he's kind of emerged, a 100-catch guy, makes big plays, scores touchdown. He fits the mold of a difference maker front end a wide receiver. Really had a great run last year, like over 8 games, and just was a monster. But then he kind of faded, and then he sat out in the playoffs. Seemed like he wanted a contract, and there was just stuff going sideways. Hurts didn't really throw the ball well last year, but he has a contract. He does what you like. He has big playability. Week 17, he does play Dallas at home. Is that a good thing or bad thing? I don't know. Dallas is supposed to have Diggs. The defensive back is they're supposed to be pretty good. But anyway, so Brown's fine. Sam Laporta, they think that he is past Travis Kelce. But since Laporta's got a little bit of issue, and I think it's minor, but they're just going to take it easy on August. So I think people are drafting him with confidence. Same thing, like this draft might have been before that happened. But in general, him and Kelce are going close together, and going there. I have a problem with Drake London going that high. I know he gets Kirk Cousins and obviously Jefferson had great years and stuff like that. But is London a guy that can score 10 touchdowns, 7 touchdowns? Is he going to catch 100 passes? I think in betting on the Comets, the potential is there. But when you look at him and say Devontae Adams, Devontae Adams is a great resume in his career. He even did it last year with the Raiders having less of a quarterback there. And so you're taking him over a proven player. Olave is a player on a rise that's kind of showed a little bit, a couple 1,000-yard seasons. So, change in offense there, I get it. I just think he's mispriced. I'm just not comfortable taking that player there, but that doesn't mean he's not going to come in. Saquon Barkley, Philadelphia offense, really, really good opportunity for him rather than playing in a low-level Giants offense for a number of years, and he's battled injuries, and we thought he was going to be a stud like McCaffrey, can do it all. The only thing is, the problem there is that, how many touchdowns will the quarterback steal from him, and will the quarterback throw more touchdown passes to lower their overall scoring touchdowns? I think last year Detroit maybe scored 27 rushing touchdowns, San Francisco and Philadelphia. So basically, those 3 teams were the best 3 teams, I think, at the league scoring in close. So Barkley's got a great opportunity. The guy doubled up with 2 Philadelphia players. That's interesting. I was really high on Jahmyr Gibbs. He gave everybody a scare. They were saying on Twitter he left practice, early for an injury, the ACL or whatever. But they said it's a hamstring, and you hate to have any players having a hamstring issue. This draft, same thing. Gibbs was drafted before that, but I think he has the difference maker of talent. But now, I don't want to say I'm going to fade him, but if I got 3 main events, I'm going to have Gibbs on one of them. If he slides, 5 more picks in the second round, I'm going to be interested, because Gibbs did everything last year. He scored double-digit touchdowns. He made big plays. The only thing he didn't do well, Detroit did a bad job getting him in space, catching the ball. I think he averaged 6.1 yards per catch. And he just was so close to hitting on a couple big plays, and he didn't break that tackle. And if he puts the big catches together and makes bigger plays catching the ball, and he hits on a couple long plays, he's going to be a monster and be a difference maker. And that's even with Montgomery in the mix. But Detroit just scores. I mean, they scored 27 touchdowns. The quarterback doesn't get many. So between the two of them, they both could score double-digit touchdowns. Which one of those guys is going to be at the end of the season and potentially be the difference maker is kind of key there. As far as Marvin Harrison, exciting talent. His father, obviously a Hall of Famer. When you look at his resume at Ohio State, just, he's got those eight for 120 and 2 touchdowns and, so many big games. And, he comes to the NFL and he's going to Arizona and, like Kyler Murray, make him reach to the next ceiling. But when you're looking at him compared to London, like, I think that guy can score double-digit touchdowns. I think he can make big plays. He might not catch as many passes and might be a little more up and down, but he's the guy that could be the difference maker and emerge, and he has a lot of talent. Obviously he has to stay healthy, improve himself, but that's the type of upside swing that I want to take. And you could say, well, I don't want to draft a rookie receiver that early. When Jamar Chase came in the league, I was really, really high on him. I had him ranked 9th at wide receiver, and he was getting drafted in like the 3rd or 4th round, and he didn't finish 9th. He finished 5th. So I think that, Harrison, doesn't have the connection because Chase came to the league and he already played with Burrow, played on like this unbelievable offense at LSU that won the championship. So Harrison, but he has that potential. He's going to fall into that range where, like the Andre Johnsons and Brandon Marshall and Fitzgerald, like where he's going to be a foundation stud. Where does he get this year? I'm not sure. What I like about him overall, Chris Olave, is I think he can score a lot more touchdowns. I think he can make bigger plays. Olave's shown stuff. He's had a little kind of a Achilles or heel thing last year, but I think he's a solid receiver, but he hasn't shown to me that he's going to have a lot of difference maker games. He'll have 8 for 110. Maybe he doesn't score, have, maybe 2 touchdowns and, 6 for 60 or something. But I think so. Harrison, I like where he goes. I respect it. I would take him over London, but that's personal preference. Jonathan Taylor was a great player a couple of years ago. Really just looked like he was on the merge, got hurt. Last year, he really got he got nicked up again, but he got outplayed by Moss, and Moss was stealing stuff that thing. So, this year he kind of has the show back, but he has a running quarterback. Will he get enough catches? I know he can catch the ball and maybe get 40 or 50, but he's going to have a big piece of the offense. He's relying on, really, it's not a rookie quarterback, but Richardson didn't play that many games in the rookie season because he got hurt. So I think that, I think he's a nice, solid player, and he's shown to have a high ceiling, so there's nothing wrong with that. Travis Kelce plays in a really, really good offense, number 1 receiving option. He's getting a lot older, but, the guy stays in good shape. He makes plays. He's got a really good connection with Mahomes, and you got the sidebar of Taylor Swift and his wife, friends. He's not going away unless he gets hurt. And I didn't see enough, even though he kind of started off slow last year. I think it was more of a team issue that their secondary receivers weren't that good last year and they didn't develop. But Rashee Rice, emerged last year. I don't know if where his off the field incident goes, but he's a much better player. Marquise Brown or Hollywood Brown, I think he is a player that had a really good season with Baltimore. Last year he was kind of banged up, and I know he already suffered a shoulder issue. He's going to miss 6 weeks, maybe 2 games, but maybe he suits up for week 1. But he's an improvement. They added Worthy, so just having those 3 players on the field, that helps Kelce get more open field. And I think the guy's going to catch 90 catches and, over 1,000 yards and maybe get 10 touchdowns again. And I really think that Mahomes, carried that team and got him to the Super Bowl last year. But this year he has weapons and he can be a complete monster, and Kelce's going to be rewarded. And I could see Rice going further and even Brown. But, so I think that's, I've drafted last year. I wanted no part of Kelce at pick 6. But, in this format, he goes higher. But in some of the other ones on the 3-4 turn, I got to gamble. I mean, he has the talent to be a foundation player at tight end, a difference maker. Even if he regresses a little bit, he's still going to be better than, probably every tight end, maybe other than 2 or 3. That's saying if Sam Laporta and Trey McBride can hold form and stuff like that. So Kelsey's fine. Talked about Olave. Derrick Henry goes from, high volume guy, scores touchdowns, doesn't get a lot of passes, to a Baltimore team that will try to run the ball, and he'll be like the closing back. I don't think his catches I think they'll regress a little bit. They'll sprinkle in a second back. He's not going to be, I don't think there are 350 carries there, but, so his big game ability is more reliant on his scoring. Once in a while, he'll still have a big play when he breaks a run, especially late in the game. So, he can get 130 yards and 2 touchdowns. So he's going to have chances. The catches won't be there, so there'll be a little more ups and downs of his scoring ability. So that makes him a little bit of a challenge, but there's nothing wrong with him as, placing a bet on him with a proven resume, other than he's getting a little older. His yards per rush went backwards, but that could have been a team issue. But, no complaints. Trey McBride, he was the second tight end last year. I mentioned that somebody comes out of nowhere. You had Zach Ertz and him on the same team last year. He was the young guy. He really, really came on the second half and really, really pushed up the thing. He was the number 1 target. So you add Harrison. So, Harrison and him are going to compete for more targets, but you got a healthier quarterback with Kyler Murray. Things seem pretty positive there. They, James Conner played pretty well last year. They added insurance with a upside running back to help that offense. Even the Wilson guy is a second wide receiver that has some talent, and the Greg Deutsch guy they've been talking about as possession guy, but he's going to get washed out because there's just not enough opportunity for him unless somebody else has an injury. But anyways, so McBride's an attractive player. Don't know if he can repeat exactly his finish last year, but the offense will be better, so there'll be more scoring chances, and it'll be interesting. The Kyren Williams, he was last year at Cam Akers. I was down on him, and Williams I kind of had the year before, but I backed off him, so I didn't end up with him, and it was a glaring mistake. The guy really played hard. He makes plays. He finds, makes scoring plays in tight quarters. The Rams really, really love him. The only thing that Rams kind of lack is that after that Todd Gurley had that big season, that offense just really hasn't featured the running back in the passing game. So I kind of thought Williams wouldn't catch enough passes, but when you look at it, he is going to get some chances. And they brought in the running back from Michigan that won the national championship, and he's more of an early down back. And I'm drawing a blank here, but I'm sure you know what I'm talking about. But I'll see him out. Blake Corum. So he's got a better insurance policy, but the backup running back isn't a high volume pass catcher. So I think Williams, I like him a little smaller back. I'm not sure he's going to be healthy. I have no knock on, like, if you want to take him, that he has a chance to be really good. But if I'm drafting him, I'm going to handcuff him if possible. In this case, this gentleman that drafted this team, he took Nick Chubb, which is more of a closer over handcuff. And then, maybe the timing, he thought maybe Karam would come back. But at that point, when he's taking Chubb, that's already his 5th running back. So now he's taken 5 players on his team where, one of those guys can't fit in his lineup. So, is he creating a hole? I don't know. So, but I'm not really trying to break down the different teams here. I just want to kind of go through some of these players. Devontae Adams, like I said, high floor, 100 catches, multiple years, doesn't have an Aaron Rodgers, played with Carr, had a good year. Last year he did enough. He was a little more erratic last year, but he played pretty well. Jacoby Myers, had success. They added another young tight end, so they got 2 really good tight ends. The quarterback, it seems like it's a toss up by Aiden O'Connell and what is the other guy? Yeah, what is the quarterback that's kicked around there went from Jacksonville to Philly to Indianapolis last year, and you got a good chance, but whatever. So, but anyway, so Adams is a proven player. Maybe he's on the decline, but he's a player, like, I put him in that range of Cup. I would take him over Olave. I could gamble on Harrison, but I have plenty of teams. I've had multiple teams I could see taking him over it. I don't think I did that. But he's a good player, really good pairing with a Lamb, that, that lead wide receiver foundation, what somebody's trying to do. And this guy went, 3 wide receivers with a tight end. So he's kind of got a little different opening. But I kind of like that. Travis Etienne, he's a guy that's I've had an interesting run with him. I really drafted him in the underdog best balls his rookie season, and he missed the whole season. I think I had him on 75 of 150 teams. And the next year he came back. He played pretty well. They didn't give him enough chances. They rotated in second back, and I think Robinson there. It's drawing a blank here. Sorry, but Robinson on Jacksonville started out beginning of the year, hit on a couple plays, stole some touchdowns. ETN didn't catch enough passes, and I think he was okay. He just didn't have enough big games. Last year, they threw to him more. He had a bump and catches. Really, Jacksonville just wasn't really good in close scoring touchdowns, and he just hasn't had the scoring hasn't been there. But last year there was so many chances that when he was he'd be in the flat going for as a dump off, and then you'd have Evan Ingram on the other side. They'd break out, and I don't know why Lawrence would consistently throw to Ingram. Like this, Ingram averaged like 8.5 yards a catch, and you got ETN who could make big plays and potentially be a difference maker. But I could see some of that changing, and I know that the structure of the wide receiver in Jacksonville a little bit different. So I decided, because where I was in this draft, to take the advantage at ETN. And what my chances at wide receivers were, I wasn't taking Andrews, a tight end, and I was going in this draft, I was gonna wait a little bit on tight end, but so I wasn't taking a tight end. You had Malik Neighbors, a talented player, but a rookie. He's getting drafted over Cup. Cup, you had the Puka thing in Cup, so I had Cup rated a little bit lower. ETN had well over 300 touches last year, and I think that he can improve. I'm not sure about the touchdown, so kind of had him rated over him. Waddle's a good player, but is he better than ETN? Nico Collins, great season, gets drafted high. Really love the offense, but there's an extra player. So there was reasons, like I have, ETN rated higher in this draft, and I'm at the mercy of the draft flow and ADPs. And in this format, I would say out of all of them, it's the weakest ADPs or draft rankings. It's kind of good, because like if you play their event a lot, you get to know their draft flows where people move players, so you can kind of spot it. If you're a novice and you go in there, you kind of have to look for the players and you kind of have to know the draft flow. But if you play in one of the other events like the NFFC, they almost correct their ADPs to help the players that don't play as much. So the player pool tightens up as the players move up and they move around, which is good, but it's also bad, because, if you're going to put the time in, you should know the players. It's almost like when we used to go to the live events and there was no really information, because there wasn't any pre-drafts before we went there. We walked into the World Championship Fantasy Football and we all knew the players, but we didn't really know, unless we did like use Mock Draft Central or something, which is, half the time people bail on it. You would, you're betting your opinion on the player. It was kind of pure, like I like this guy, this is how I'm rated, and then as time developed, you got more sites, doing fantasy content and stuff like that. So, so this is what we're, up against when we're making these kind of decisions. But so I have ETN rated higher. I had White. Rashad White had a great season. He was a top 3 or 4 or 5 running back last year. I just decided to take the advantage. The same thing. I think that he had the potential. He had a consistency factor. It's a first draft. I'm looking at their ADP draft flow. I'm going to try this. So that's what I did. And when I came back, like normally in some other event, like Michael Pittman at the end of the 4th round is not going to happen. Like Metcalf almost made it. Diggs almost made it. So like you could say that I almost got out on that turn with 2 wide receivers, but I was comfortable in this particular case, because I mentioned Ferguson earlier, to cheat the tight end because he got 70 last year. I think he could be the second receiving option on that team and get a few more catches and up his scoring. So I was comfortable feeling like I got a 200+ point player, and I think I think he scored like 180, 190 in this scoring system last year. So if he gets over 200, I got a 200-point player. Pittman, had a bunch of passes, even with a running quarterback, even with a backup quarterback, he held value. He added a consistency factor. He had 8 catches in a lot of games. So, I'm okay how that broke and through 5 rounds. But back to the draft flow, and I don't want to make this go too long. I'm only going to let it go an hour. And, I got to get, in order for some of these things to go a little further, I probably have to get some feedback that people like what I'm saying, and or whatever. But so Mark Andrews coming off injury, really he's been an elite tight end. This particular case, Dalton Kincaid probably gets drafted him in other formats in front of him because Buffalo lost Stephon Diggs. Kincaid, had a pretty good rookie season, not a difference maker season, didn't show the touchdowns and stuff like that, but he tends to get drafted in front of Andrews. If Andrews healthy, he's going to have a good year, but he still has Isaiah Likely to compete for some targets. The wide receiver position at Baltimore just hasn't emerged where, you think you have a competitive wide receiver one. So Andrews is really considered the lead wide receiver there. So he's fine. He has the potential, and he could score double-digit touchdowns. Just need to stay healthy. Isaiah Pacheco, he's in the right type of offense. Not really much competition behind him, and caught a few more passes than I thought last year. Not really good in close. The potential's there, but part of me thinks that he has a little bit of injury risk. The style he runs, he's kind of like short jabby steps, and then he gets in some space. He does have speed, but I don't know. And I just look at him, I just don't see, like, he doesn't scream stud to me, but he fits in the offense, because I've already discussed, mentioned that I really think that the Kansas City Chiefs offense is going to be a lot better this year. Malik Neighbors, it's just it's hard for me to put a stamp on them, especially when I probably have him rated a lot lower because Jones is Daniel Jones is going to run the ball. He's coming off injury. I think he throws the ball well enough. And 2 years ago, they looked like they wanted to open up a little bit and throw the ball more. And I think he brings the talent they're looking for. I just don't, are they going to throw the ball 500 times, 550? I don't think 600 times. And then, how good is Jones finishing drives with touchdowns to wide receivers? So I get it. Take the upside. But I would probably take Kupp in front of him, especially now with the Puka getting a little nicked up. But we'll have to see how that shakes out. You could say that like he's right behind Harrison or something like that, and he went to LSU and he had a really good season. But I'm not sure. He's kind of I'm not going to take him. And I know that another friend of mine in baseball this year, we take some rookie players. Langford or something from is one that stands out from Texas Rangers, and here we are, like 120 games of the season. The guy has 7 home runs, and we thought this guy would hit 25. Missed a little bit of time, but we invested in a young player in the 5th or 6th round. Doesn't develop, and I think Neighbors kind of falls into that category. But football is a little bit different because he definitely has a job and stuff like that. And not that Langford wasn't in the lineup every day, but Cooper Kupp talked about. Devon Achane, whatever, really showed the explosiveness last year. Miami ran the ball really so well, but he did get nicked up a couple times, and maybe the first injury he got when he got nicked up, I think he missed some time, didn't play much at the end of the year. I think if the 3rd or 4th game, he had like that 50-point fantasy day when most people had him on the bench, unless you got forced to play him in a bye week. But anyways, or somebody had an injury. I don't even know if he made the bye week, but he's still going to be in somewhat of a split, and they drafted a 3rd running back to kind of complement. So he's kind of that upside swing that has the talent, but he's not a lock. So there's a lot of complications there. As he could be a league winner, possibly, but I don't know. So I'm kind of neutral on him. I put him in some spots in the best ball to have some shares just in case. But I didn't fight for him, and I didn't build my teams around him. Same with, I put him I like the Kyrene Williams. The 2 of them, I kind of had the similar where I had some shares. I didn't want to get beat, but I want to mix it up and have him in there, but I didn't do it. I talked about Dalton Kincaid, and I think that he has the talent. Jalen Waddle was banged up and he's kind of seemed like he picked up some injuries the last couple of years, but he saw, a couple of years ago before Hill got there, how explosive he was, and he does have that talent. And he really, if Hill had an issue, he could really, really blossom and have a special year. Really works well as an upside wide receiver too, especially where Hill is going to command so much attention by defense. And just, he just hasn't had that season where he he got the volume of catches and made the big plays. Like early on, he had a lot of catches and was close to the line of scrimmage, and then he got less catches and made bigger plays. If he can put it all together in the same season, and he has, his floor, I would think, is probably 8 catches, and potentially to get more. So really, really like the pick. Kyle Pitts, does he get a bump up for Kirk Cousins being the quarterback? Hawkinson, he's got a year removed from injury, 1,000 yards of rookie season. I think he's a nice player. Probably gets drafted in that range. But I think if I look at him and Ferguson's seems like a little further down the road, and Dallas is going to throw the ball a lot. Where I don't know, Cousins is going to throw the ball decent, but I don't know if the wide receiver pieces are there. Where like Ferguson, I think is close enough to him. So in that comparison, Nico Collins was a complete monster. Player I probably whiffed on last year. Made big plays, got downfield. Really, Stroud was an awesome quarterback in his rookie season. He looked the part as a stud, and I think that's going to be pretty exciting there. But he's coming off a career year, hadn't done it before. There's three wide receivers that are good. So how does it get divvied up there? And then you add, a better running back that should help the offense. But that's an offense on the rise. They could score a lot of points. Strike for these guys that the Houston players, when you're building this format, your third round pick, he's not gonna be there for you in the championship round if you do make it. So that is somewhat of a factor if you're kind of being equal. But you still can crush your league or get best record and it won't matter. But you might not win the league because you don't get paid because you're losing the championship, whatever. But anyway, so great player, needs to stay healthy, but career. So I got a little area of that, but I have I like his direction, and I really like the offense and the quarterback. Evan Ingram, 113 catches, I believe, last year. Short yards per catch. They had some injuries at wide receiver that kind of benefited him. By far his best season as far as catches. There's no way this guy repeats for me this year, the number of catches. I just don't see it happening. You're going to buy him at a high point, and I think he might settle back. Maybe catches 80 passes, and maybe makes bigger plays. Maybe the offense is better because Lawrence was, got a little injury. But I am not going after a guy that had his career year in catches, and that's just me. But people will have a tough time getting away from that, especially in this format. Josh Jacobs, goes to a much better offense. So he's he's a guy that can score double-digit touchdowns. He can catch some passes. He's at 50. He's a volume guy. The Packers offenses look much better in the second half last year, and he might be a better, more consistent fit than Aaron Jones. So, and especially where, he was really good 2 years ago, and he's coming off a down year, he kind of catching a bounce back. So he falls in that range where, because ETN, White, Jacobs, Mixon, James Cook, they're all kind of close together, and which one's going to be the best, and who has the best end of the year. So I have some shares of Jacobs. I think that's really, really fair price for him, especially for a team that started with a tight end and wide receiver. Devonta Smith really kind of felt like he was a disappointment last year, but when you look at his final numbers, he wasn't really that far off, especially if you add in his playoff game. I think he missed one game in the regular season. Just kind of like that secondary receiver can make big plays. Just needs that Philadelphia offense to get that little bounce in their step where they can score 30-something points more consistently and maintain the passing ability of the offense deeper in the season. So I really like where he goes. I think he's almost like him and Waddle are kind of like really kind of those standout wide receiver too. And not that Collins, like in some of those best ball drafts, he gets drafted like a lot earlier, but Waddle and Smith are really kind of foundation pieces where I think they make a lot of sense as the wide receiver twos that miss that, because some of these teams that have like, you consider, Jefferson and Cooper Kupp, they're really two wide receiver one potentials where, I think Waddle fits, a wide receiver two profile with upside, and same with Smith. Mike Evans, had an unbelievable scoring year with Baker Mayfield. Pretty impressive. The difference was that, he went from an offense with Tom Brady throwing the ball 750 times or so to Mayfield throwing the ball like 180 less, but he still maintained value. He has 1,000 yards every season, but he falls into that, I don't know if it's I can't say it's a career year because he's had that high touchdown year and stuff like that. So to me, I'm kind of neutral on him. I've had him before where I respected him, took it early. Last year he was really discounted, and he's the guy, like him and Pittman or the guys that were getting drafted like 6th or 7th round because of what was going on with the quarterback. And those guys pushed up and held for him were better. Where this year, I think Evans might slide back a little bit, but because the tight ends get pushed up, his price point in the 4th round is much better than somebody take him early in a 3rd round in a different format. So I think they'll be fine. He just has to stay healthy. But in the back of my mind, I think there's some regression there, but no complaints about taking him. Josh Allen as the lead quarterback is a problem for me. I get it. He gets a lot of rushing yards. He gets touchdowns. His tight end's on the improve, and maybe he can develop into like a Travis Kelce type or a Sam Laporta type tight end and be a volume guy. And he does have a lead receiver, but his secondary receivers have to prove a lot. And in Allen's, a lot of his success is on the rushing stuff. And he still is going to rate really, no matter how you look at it, he has, a bunch of rushing yards. He's going to, score double-digit rushing touchdowns potentially. And he's going to get enough. He'll get Kincaid 7 touchdowns and the other few guys 3 or 4 or whatever. But there's enough there where I'm not going to be interested. And they play the Jets week 17 at home, which weather could be a factor, and Jets defense is a bit bigger. It's probably less of a factor here than the best ball thought, because here you could still have a good week 15 and 16, and you just need a decent game. And he is playing at home, and the Jets defense stopping the pass is one thing, but he still can kind of maintain a floor by rushing the ball. So, but he's been a great player for 3 years in a row, 4 years in a row, because of it, because he does everything. Joe Mixon goes to a good offense. Kind of, I think you could kind of say that the pieces to the Houston offense are better than what the Bengals were supposed to have a couple years ago when it kind of broke down, when they had Boyd and Higgins and Chase and they had Mixon. And but they have 3 good receivers in Houston. They have a good tight end. You add Mixon. Just adds a lot of scoring chances. I mean, there's a chance to get any pass interference. Mixon might get some 1-yard runs, So I've got shares of Mixon, kind of a neutral player, but in the soft zone, you could see that where, Jacobs goes, he goes, and then, there's no running backs until the 5th round in this. So, I don't consider that it's that major of a drop off, but people wanted the receivers and stuff like that. Deebo Samuel, he just has that mystique of get that rushing stuff from a wide receiver in a really good offense, made big plays. He's had 2 really good seasons, in the last, I think 3, maybe 4. The Ayuk thing is a factor because if he gets traded, but Ayuk was kind of played the deep guy last year, and Debo can potentially do that. But Purdy's played pretty well, so I prefer him where he goes right here, much better than where he goes in the best ball. He is actually getting drafted in the 2nd round around that Chris Olave thing, because people are shoving, wide receivers in that because they just want to get as many wide receivers as possible. So the form flows different. But in this particular format, that structure of St. Brown, Taylor, Waddle, and Debo's the 3rd one. Then you add Rice as a 4th. That is the old school structure of like an Ian Ritchie, who will never listed, that had a lot of success, is right there. You just jammed up the foundation. You added consistency and upside. We're going to cheat the the RB2 and see if we can get out. This guy doubled the 2 Washington backs, so he thinks he's got a starter. Zamir White, I'm not sure he's going to get a lot of catches. He gets Joe Burrow, as a guy that could be a top 5 or 6 quarterback. So the structure's kind of the old school. He can lay off wide receivers late because he feels like he's got 4. So there's a lot to like about that style. in a regular event like one of the FFWC or the NFFC, if he went with his style, I would think that Joe Burrow might flip and be in the 6th round, and he gets the better quarterback there, and he gets a tight end in 8, but he's going to have a lot better options in that round in this kind of style because the tight ends aren't going to get you pushed up. But the same thing, some of those receivers are going to move up too. But so the dynamics won't be the same. But if it broke white, that is an interesting format that people like to play, and it's a really attractive and it's successful. It has consistency factor. But like I said, a lot of the top players, George, after Evo, Patrick Mahomes. Like I said, he just really didn't have his year last year. I just think that he's just really going to be really, really good this year. Chance to get over 40 touchdowns. He just obviously needs Kelsey to stay healthy for one more year, and he needs Rice not to get suspended and they're not, his court date is like not even there, and I don't even think there's charges, so that might not get settled to next year. But hopefully the NFL doesn't like drop the ball like a week before the season and say some of these guys are suspended. I wish they would just address this stuff right away, but they wanted to go through the court process, and both him and Addison haven't gone through it. So, but in Mahomes, I'm very interested, and seems kind of weird to go double tight end and quarterback, because most people will say like, oh, never take that, that's doom. But as time is involved in some of these high stake things, the running backs are much better in the 6th and 7th round than they were before. When I went the first time I did the high stakes market, there was 26 running backs get drafted in the first 32 picks. How dumb were we? It's just, it's the same scoring system, as it is now in that format. So Brandon Ayuk, is he going to get traded? Is he going to get signed? Does he stay there? It's just, he's like a wild card. And so I don't have an opinion. I think he offers a lot, can be a little more up and down because of where they used him as a deep player, he gained like 17.8 yards per catch last year, and he scored like 8 touchdowns. So I just put him in the neutral category. I really don't feel like the Olave and him, as powerful, and he's kind of relying on Achane to kind of pop here. But I like the Hall. So it's the potential's there. I don't know if the scoring ability is, but we'll see how that shakes out. DJ Moore was just really kind of connected with Fields last year. Got a little bum ankle injury. I think the quarterback play will be better this year overall. And not that Fields didn't create value for Moore, I think, but what the change in quarterback might create more scoring chances, longer drives, more opportunities to move the ball, not where they didn't have it last year. And Fields is a guy that I think his career isn't, he's going to get better, and he's going to get another job. So Moore's explosive. Allen's a little out of shape. I really like, and I wish I knew, I was going to look it up, Odunze or whatever. I really like the potential of him, but Moore as an upside wide receiver 3, kind of really like it. So when you compare it to the team with Amon Brown, Taylor's got a little more catches. Henry might score more touchdowns. And the other 2 receivers, you could say it's pretty close, so like the structure in both, just a little bit different. And, the upside of Henry and Taylor are a little bit different. Stephon Diggs, great career, 100 catches. Now everybody's like, where is he going to fit in this offense? Is it going to be Collins? Is it going to be Dell? Dell's coming off an injury, but he has long enough. Even if he fades back and he's got 80 catches, I mean, he's a really good player. I think that the different style of the quarterback's not scrambling and running as much. I think the Stroud thing is going to benefit him to give him some more chances at big games, and he's still going to have a somewhat of a consistency factor. I don't think he's going to disappear as much as last year, unless the games that could be down games is when, maybe that Houston plays a lot better offensively, gets up ahead early, and they don't have to, chase on the scoreboard. But, nice, solid, nice proven player. You could say that those 2 receivers on that team, that Neighbors and him, if they were flipped, it would be okay. Could live with that because Diggs has multiple 100-catch seasons, so kind of worked out. But, that's where I stand on there. I'll give you 3 more players, and I'm going to move on. Jalen Hurts, you know, he scores so many touchdowns in close from, everybody pushing him in there, and he just kind of like didn't have it in the second half of the year throwing the ball, and just even that, I think the year before in the playoffs, or I don't know if it was the Super Bowl or whatever. I don't know if his shoulder was hurt and he kind of faded, but he does have a high floor because he runs the ball and he scores. He has two really good receivers. The tight end is decent, but hasn't emerged where we thought he would get to a higher ceiling. They don't really have a great wide receiver 3, but that doesn't really matter when he rushes the ball. They play Dallas at the end of the year at home, week 17, so it's still good. Him and Allen, you would say could consider them similar running the ball a little bit. Hurts would score more touchdowns, but Allen would make bigger plays. But Hurts has much better receivers. The package deal is miles ahead of Allen, so they're getting drafted. I have Hurts rated number 1 and Patrick Mahomes number 2, but Hurts gets the because of the Russian. But I think Mahomes is going to be the guy that going to have the length of more impactful things, because so there'll be games that Philly will run the ball really well, and the quarterback won't have to throw it as much. DK Metcalf, just really kind of, he was okay last year, just didn't click where the scoring and the big plays and just the offense. They had 3 receivers, but he has the size. He should score more touchdowns. I'm not sure if what will happen as the quarterback play, and Geno Smith. Oops, I showed you the names. I didn't mean to show you the names. Sorry about that. I didn't show you the names. They were team names. But as far as like Geno Smith, if he struggles, I think they're going to go to the backup quarterback there, and Sam Howell might actually be a little better passer if you give him protection, make bigger plays. I mean, he threw over 40 times a lot of games last year, so it might help Metcalf. But I think Metcalf is a wide receiver 3. The potential of the package is there where he can score touchdowns, make big plays. He's got 90 catches, I think, in 1 year. So nice player there. And then Michael Pittman, I had talked a little bit last year. He's just like a high volume thing. They don't have a tight end. Their downs is hurt a little bit. The third wide receiver, he gets a lot of catches. That he probably lacks, when you could say that you could compare him to Olave, because Pittman has to prove he can score touchdowns, and Richardson's can do the same. But I think that the lack of competition for targets is there, that Pittman will naturally have a better consistency factor, and where he goes that late in the draft is helpful. But this is a totally different draft flow. Long-winded here, and I only got through 4 rounds, but kind of just some insights on players, especially for somebody that's kind of, let's go get the crash course on the player inventory for this year. Because you can, like a friend of mine said, like, you can catch up on football real fast, but you still have to be able to make the quick decisions on the clock. And at the same time, you want to, which player do you like in the first round, and can you get to that draft position to build that team? Like, oh, I like Bijan Robinson or Breece Hall. Oh, I got pick 12. I got pick 11, or whatever. Or you're whatever, the receiver guy, and it breaks the wrong way. So that's what my look through the player pool. Like I said, I'm kind of wish get some feedback of this stuff, just because I want to kind of do some videos where I can use my recall of the player pool, help people get a little more educated. And potentially I probably should try to do this where I use an AI, it gets broken up, and do some of those short reels or something like that. But that's where we're at right now. I'll probably sneak in an NFFC one next, and try to find a FFWC draft, and do one each. And maybe when I do the next draft, I'll know who I have talked about basically, but I'll talk about the different draft flow, and then I'll kind of focus on the 5 through 8 type of players and stuff like that, and then 9 to 12, just to kind of cover the whole thing, but 3 different type of formats. But the flow is going to be a little bit different. So that's what I'm going to try to do here. I got to jump off. I got to write about the bullpens for baseball, multitasking, did a little bit of work off the field today. Got to play in a golf tournament tomorrow. I'm a very good golfer, but I enjoy getting some exercise and doing some stuff. So be well, and I'll talk to you soon.